the country's top schools. My name is Toya Singh. We're taking a deeper dive into this story, right?
That's right. So many languages to choose from today. Should it be French? Should it be Spanish? Should it be Sanskrit? Should it be anything else? Should it be 3 languages or 4 languages? Well, I'm very confused as a mother and I want some answers. I'm sure so do you. So let's dive into today's episode. I'm Sonal Mehrotra Kapoor. Let's get started. The big language swish. What is the rationale behind 3 languages? Should Indian students be thinking global? 3 languages, which one should you pick? At what age in life should you pick? And in a world that will be AI dominated, what role will languages play in employability? We try and get you all the answers.
And then we have for you a beautiful story we've got coming in straight from Bihar. This is actually a story shared by our News 18 network itself. This is a young girl who talked on camera about how her parents had denied her the ability to study sciences. The government has intervened. Her parents couldn't afford it. They've now intervened and she is going to be going and studying sciences, but she also advocates for the importance of sciences being made available for girls in villages across the country.
And then coming up on the program, the countdown has begun of Sunita Williams' journey back home. SpaceX Crew 9 undocks from ISS. The mission back home is now underway. We bring you the critical moments, what exactly is happening every step of the way, right here today and tomorrow on The Breakfast Club.
For decades, India's education system followed a 3-language formula, a model first introduced back in 1968 and then you had it reinforced in 1986. The idea behind it was very simple. Students would learn 3 languages and most of the people watching this have followed that. 3 languages, your mother tongue, a regional or national language and 1 additional language. But today the purpose of this model has completely changed.
That's right. You know, students, parents, teachers, they're all thinking about career opportunities, higher studies and global exposure. And that's where foreign languages have sort of come into the picture. Under the new National Education Policy for 2020, students still follow the 3-language formula, but the key shift here is that schools and states now have more freedom to choose which language they want to actually offer.
Right, and while the model suggests that 2 of the 3 languages should be Indian, that's not compulsory. Important to remember. As a result, many private schools are prioritizing German, French, Spanish over regional languages because they believe that that's what parents and students are constantly demanding.
Yeah.
All with the final goal of better employability abroad. Schools say students are less interested in the idea of taking up regional languages, Punjabi, Urdu, even good old Sanskrit, because they don't see them helping in the process of global careers.
So instead, fluency in Germany, in German actually, beg your pardon, French or Spanish as well, opens doors of higher education in Europe, global corporate jobs and international scholarships as well. But, you know, is that just a perception? On that program today, we are trying to define and get answers to 3 fundamental questions. Number 1, what is the rationale behind 3 languages? For example, why not 4 languages? If there is a rationale behind 3 languages, then what should be your pick of those 3 languages for your kid? And number 3, employability. Is it directly linked to languages, even in an AI-driven world? Very fascinating questions, one that go out in all households, I'm sure. Something we'll get all our guests to get answers to.
Okay, so let's very quickly first introduce our audiences to the 3 top education experts joining us to break this down on the show today. We'd like to welcome all of you here on the show. Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary, she's faculty at IIT Kharagpur. She's the coordinator at the Indian Knowledge Systems Division. She joins us this morning. Good morning, Doctor. Dr. Nikita V. Kothari, she's the principal of Indo-Scots Global School, Thane. She's joining us, and Mona Vedya at St. John's Universal School, Mumbai, Goregaon, ICSC. They are joining us here too. Good morning. Thank you all for joining us, ma'ams. It's so lovely to have you bright and early. Feels like we're back in school in some ways. Okay, all right. If I could come over first to both of the principals who are joining us right now, Dr. Nikita V, and if I could come over to Mona. If I could ask both of you, just give us, before we get deep into this entire conversation, just give us the numbers. Mona, we'll come to you first. Broadly, how large is your student body? Just the student groups that are studying these languages, and what proportions are studying what languages? Just to give us an initial idea. Mona, first we'll come to you, and then after that, Dr. Nikita will come to you.
Good morning, everyone. We are a school of 2,000 students, and from primary, that is from grade 1, we start teaching them 3 languages, that is English, Hindi and Marathi. And then from grade 3 onwards, we add French also, because we believe international and global exposure also is very important. And knowing an international language does open a lot of doors for you. So largely, if you see, my 1,500 plus students are learning 4 languages, not 3 languages.
Okay. And Dr. Nikita?
Yes, we are strength of 1,500, and we are based in Mumbai. We also have 3 language system. First language is English. Second is the regional language Marathi. And the third language we are having Hindi. So these are 3 languages, and yes, we offer French. There are students studying French and German in our school.
Okay.
That's
a good overview, yeah.
Yeah, but largely then what I'm hearing from both of you is that it's actually not a 3 language system, it's a 4 language system. You know, back when we were growing up, and I would love Dr. Nikita and maybe Ma'am Vaidya also to sort of come in on it while Anuradha waits for us to answer that question patiently. You know, when we were growing up, we had it wasn't defined as a 3 language system, but it was understood that one will be your mother tongue, the language that is spoken at home. There would be English because that was the medium of communication at in school, etc. And there would be one language that you would pick up in the area that you stayed in. I had a disadvantage that way. I was in UP where Hindi was both spoken at home and outside, so there was no third language per se, right? But why is it so important for kids now to learn more than just what they are hearing at home and learning in their textbooks? Where has this come from? Is it coming from a lens of employability only? Or do you think there is a basic cognitive skill development that is required, and thus the question has come?
Definitely, not just employability, but yes, cognitive benefits are also there. You must remember this phrase growing up, that jack of all, master of none.
Right.
But that comes from multiple intelligences point of view. And today we have seen that being jack of all is far more important. And cognitive benefits, as we see that neural plasticity increases and improved memory, attention, enhanced problem solving, critical thinking skills. So all these skills are improved. And also being multiple linguistic definitely opens multiple career doors for you. Because not only in diplomacy, not only in various careers, you can become an interpreter, you can become a translator, you can become content writer, not only for medical fraternity, but also for software industries. So linguistic intelligence definitely opens many doors for you. Because once you understand various nuances of a language, you also are immersed into the culture.
Yes, but Dr. Nikita, then the question really is, at what age do you introduce, and are we overburdening our kids by saying 4 languages? Jaldi shuru kar do, bachpan se shuru kar do. Like, at what age is the right time to sort of introduce more languages for kids? I know it's easier for them to adapt.
Actually, we say in ancient India, as the saying goes, Vasudeva Kutumbakam. The world is one family. When the child is in the womb, the child starts understanding everything. We say in Mahabharata, so Abhimanyu was the child who was listening to the mother. So it is at very young age, and the researchers say that the child understands mother language very well. When the child blabbers, when the child is just 6 months old, the child understands the language of mother. So I feel the language is at very young age. It develops multiple intelligence and problem solving skills, adaptability, leading to a better academic performance. The combination of regional, national, international language equips the students with better communication skills and career prospects. I feel the younger the better. And we at Indo Scots Global School starts with three language from grade senior KG onwards. So they are doing Hindi, they are doing English, and from grade one onwards, we are starting with Marathi as well. We've started with because that is an ancient language, and language you see it is the roots to all our culture. So we've started with Sanskrit as well.
Okay, so I want to complicate this a little. We haven't yet gone over to Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary. Let's bring her on. Doctor, so lovely to have you joining us. Want to come to you to ask you, Sanskrit, we haven't yet spoken enough about it. We've touched on it lightly. A lot of us studied Sanskrit in schools, and doctor, honestly, when we were younger, I remember cursing and saying कि इसका फायदा क्या है, क्यों कर रहे हैं हम? You know, Sanskrit कहाँ use करेंगे? It's only later in life. It's not that I was suddenly using Sanskrit, but it's later in life that I got an appreciation of just how beautiful the language was, how one could access scriptures in the original manner in which they were written. All of that was incredible. But Dr. Anuradha, it does feel like, and this is where I want you to come in, it feels like, as an outsider who can't see the numbers, Sanskrit may have suffered a beating over the last few decades when it comes to being a language that we don't see young people choose enough. What do you think? Is that the right analysis or not?
So I teach Sanskrit and heritage in IIT Kharagpur, and I can tell you that I have quite a number of takers for the subject. So I grew up, I'll just tell you a little bit about my linguistic journey here. I grew up in the Sri Aurobindo Ashram in Pondicherry, where the first two languages that we are taught in school, in kindergarten actually, are Sanskrit and French. And one of the reasons why Sanskrit and French were taught was because the mother, who was the founder of the ashram, she believed that Sanskrit is the language of India's soul. She says every child born in France knows French, and similarly, every child known in India must know Sanskrit, because if you know Sanskrit, you have a connection with India's soul. And the second language was French, and the reason for choosing French was because French was the most systematic language for the mind to develop. So there's one very important feature that we tend to overlook in this language debate, is the role that a language plays in the development of a child's mind. And in that context, we see that Sanskrit, as well as several other classical languages like this Greek and Latin, but I won't like to put Sanskrit in the classical language category alone, because that is what has also removed it from the mainstream, language learning, etc. So Sanskrit is a language which is so systematic and so precise that when one studies that language, it literally ends up systematizing the human mind in a manner that will then allow you to grasp any other language with much greater ease. So the training of Sanskrit, so the learning of a language is basically the training of the human mind in order to grasp how we look at reality and format it through linguistic expressions.
I see.
Honestly speaking, because of what Sanskrit can do with the precision of every sound, every utterance that you have, it is a very, very efficient tool in order to train the human mind to become extremely proficient in grasping all other languages. So if Sanskrit is the basis, then all other languages become much easier to grasp. The phonetics are precise, the grammar is
But
extremely
Dr. Anuradha,
structured.
I wanted to get a clarification. When you said it was your first language, you mean you were communicating and writing and studying in Sanskrit?
So in the ashram school, we learn Sanskrit through Sanskrit. So in that context, yes. So we learn Sanskrit as a living spoken language. And there are schools today also, like the school in Jaipur, the Jaipuria school in Lucknow, where everybody is taught Sanskrit, and they're also taught it up to a certain up to the higher secondary.
Well, I'm a product of Jaipuria school. It's crazy you bring it up. And yes, it was compulsory. Yes. Yeah.
Yes, but I think what was very important, especially like now when I'm teaching it at IIT Kharagpur, the way in which I present it is that Sanskrit is a language of coding, because it requires your attention on every single dot and line. So if the mind is trained to focus on details, that mind then becomes naturally capable of doing even things like coding, etc. in the future.
Sanskrit
So
is the language of? What was the word you said?
Coding.
Coding. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that's just one part of it where it is a faculty development tool of the mind itself. So what I say is that it makes your mind like an operating system on which you can play anything after that with great precision.
Yeah, so Toya, so your question on what is the use of Sanskrit really today? Like we were put through this grilling Sanskrit subject period
But it
in
taught
school.
us a way to think almost.
So perhaps not, it wasn't looked at the same way back then, but maybe the rationale that she's trying to bring out here and for viewers to sort of take away is that it's sort of the phonetics building and the areas in your brains it activates, it's actually opening up your mind to accept other languages. That's why they're saying it's a good base language to have, which is interesting.
But I like that metaphor with coding,
Yeah.
because that becomes particularly relevant today also. All right, let's go over to our other guests now, just to get a little bit more of the context on the question of the future. I love that question too. In today's AI world, you know, where you can use ChatGPT so easily to just pick up your phone and translate stuff, and you have apps like Sarvam coming along that are developing in multiple languages, all the Indian languages, for example.
And just to say, AI might be doing coding. Humans might not be required to do coding anymore. So in that context.
Right, in that context, where do we see this entire conversation going? Mona, we'll come over to you first.
Well, yes, knowing international languages and multiple languages, not only of the country and state, definitely gives you an edge over others, because then you not only come from a place where you know the culture of the place, you are immersed into it, and you can have better interpersonal relationships with others. And we all know that careers in interpretation exist, careers in you can become a diplomat, you can become a translator, plus tourism, hospital, medical industry, software industry, academic industry. I mean, all doors are open for you.
But I think, Mona, one of the nuances, and maybe we'll take this to Dr. Nikita next, one of the nuances, Dr. Nikita, we're trying to bring forth is when machines will be able to do it all, and they can do the language translation for you, which they already can to some degree. Google Translate is very, very sharp. It's able to catch on the nuances. What role then do you see any of this playing? Dr. Nikita.
I personally believe that no one can replace human touch, the warmth. We are social animals and we need each other. So yes, though AI can take over many things, but they cannot take over human beings. Multilingualism professionals are high in demand, particularly in industries like international business, as ma'am added tourism, hospitality, translation services. But let me tell you, career opportunities are vast. Proficient multiple language can open career opportunities in government services, diplomacy, education, research. As ma'am was talking about Sanskrit. So there are many Vedas, they are still not decoded. So there is a lot more. You feel that the truth is this much, but truth is vast. Global connectivity. As India's economy is growing day by day, the global connection will increase the demand of multilingual professionals, and that will continue to rise, believe.
Sure. Actually,
if
when
I
it comes to...
I may add a point here.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Answer your question that what is AI going to do in future when it is so intelligent and sharp and it is taking over all the industries. I think it is about the prompt engineering, the detailed prompt we give, the kind of answers we get. And up till the point the AI is not able to give prompts to itself, I think we are safe. Then because they need human intervention.
But apparently that time is not very far away.
Yeah, I was going to say it's
that time is not very far away. But we've got to wrap it up. So can I just go over for last comments? I'm coming to you, Dr. Anuradha. I think when it comes to employability, it's a bit of a question mark because we really don't know what jobs of the future are going to look like. So let's park that aside for a minute. If we were only to look at languages without getting into overburdening our kids by wanting just too much and wanting everything, just keeping that lens in mind, if I can get some quick answers from all three of you, that at what age should you introduce your kid to that third language, assuming that two are already understood at home? English and Hindi, or one regional language and English, are mostly common. At what age do you introduce that third language? Let's begin with Dr. Anuradha, please.
Yeah, so I think that the earlier the child learns a language or is exposed to a new language, the better the child is able to grasp it, because once there is a certain inhibition about, the burden of learning a new language, then it becomes harder for the kid to start learning it. So I think at the age of, let's say, 6 or so, the child should be exposed to as many languages. They say by the age of 5, in fact, a child is capable of grasping as many languages as possible. And just to come back to Sanskrit very quickly, I just wanted to add that if one has a base of Sanskrit, then it allows the vocabulary that then allows them to pick up all the other regional language, including a lot of foreign languages. For example, French is very close to Sanskrit. German has a lot of similarities with Sanskrit structures. The Slavic languages, we have like a plethora of foreign languages that are very closely connected to the structures of the Sanskrit language. And therefore, if this language is introduced very early on, children will be able or will be equipped with the tools necessary to pick up many other languages across the world. And in fact, this even the Chinese intonation was given by a Sanskrit scholar once upon a time. So there are many connections with Sanskrit with languages across the world. So I think that is something that we must think
Dr.
about.
Anuradha is saying at 6 years of age, introduce Sanskrit as a third language, because then it goes on, you're saying, to sort of prepare a base to learn so many more in the future.
No, I'm proposing that Sanskrit can come in much earlier, but let's say the foreign languages or something that you want to learn, they can only come in after the age of 6 or maybe even at the age of 8, etc.
Right.
But at the earliest age, I think the early languages to be taught to a child should be Sanskrit. Because the Sanskrit and the regional languages.
But how many would you teach? I would like to know, because I know early is when you should introduce it. But you have a 2-year-old child, would you be speaking in 3 languages, or would you start slowly?
No, I think the mother tongue is the first language that a child should be exposed to, because that's the language of their environment and that's the language that they must learn and be confident around. Yes, and we also see that a lot of, like, for example, in France, in Japan, in Germany, they still conduct a lot of their teaching in their mother tongues, in the regional languages. They, of course, have an easier story because they don't have such a multitude of languages that we have, which complicates the language issue significantly.
Which makes India beautiful too. It's been lovely to have all three of you join us. Thank you. Thank you for shining such a light on this entire topic. We'd like to thank right now India's international movement to Unite Nations for helping us find the panelists here that we have today with us.
All right, so that was fascinating. Which language would you prefer? Why don't you write in your feedback to us? The details will flash on our screen to let us understand which language are you gravitating towards. But talking about gravitating towards language, let's talk about subjects. And every now and then, there's a story that comes along that reminds us of just how powerful a single voice can be. Now, a News 18 Bihar story featuring a young girl that went absolutely viral. Now, who is this girl? Her name is Khushboo Kumari, and she had always dreamed of studying science. But what happened to her, Toya, then?
So her parents had set a condition. Essentially, they'd said score 400 or science won't be an option. And she scored 399. Seemingly just like that, the door on the dream closed. It isn't, her parents weren't entirely being unreasonable. There's it's very expensive for them, and she's going to be talking a little bit about that. But a miracle took place. Her story went viral. It reached people who could actually make a difference in her life. The union government stepped in, and today Khushboo will be able to study biology and hopefully fulfill all of her dreams. So we're very, very happy to have her with us. We thought it's a very positive story to start the day with. So let's just go over to her to understand more. खुशबू, हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए धन्यवाद। खुशबू, अपने शब्दों में हमें बताइए, आपने क्यों बताया मीडिया को, क्या हुआ आपके साथ? पहले आप मतलब अच्छी तरह हमें बताइए, क्या हुआ?
मैम, जैसे हम छोटे थे तभी से हमें डॉक्टर बनना था।
हाँ।
तो हम जब मैट्रिक का रिजल्ट आया तो हमको लगा कि शायद अच्छा रिजल्ट आएगा तो हमको साइंस दिलवा दिया जाएगा, लेकिन पैसा के कमी के कारण मम्मी आर्ट्स में एडमिशन करवा दी, साइंस में नहीं करवाई। और मुझे आर्ट्स में पढ़ने में कोई इंटरेस्ट नहीं था, और यहाँ के लोग 11th क्लास पढ़ते भी नहीं थे, तो शायद हम भी नहीं पढ़े, गांव में रहते थे। तो उसके बाद 12th क्लास करने स्टार्ट ही किए थे, दानापुर में जाते थे यहाँ से। तो मुझे आर्ट्स में इंटरेस्ट नहीं था, क्योंकि बचपन से मुझे शौक था डॉक्टर बनने के लिए, और मुझे मैथ और साइंस बहुत अच्छे लगते थे। तो मुझे साइंस सबसे अच्छे लगते थे, तो मुझे आर्ट्स में कोई इंटरेस्ट नहीं था और पढ़ने में मन भी नहीं लगता था। तो जब हम पढ़ाई करते थे ना, तो मुझे लगता था कि शायद हम साइंस पढ़ते ताकि मन लगा कर पढ़ते। तो स्कूल ऐसे कभी कभी घर में भी बोलता था कि तू आर्ट्स पढ़ेली वो काका। मुझे बुरा लगता था कि शायद हम भी साइंस पढ़ते अपन सपना पूरा करते। तो वही मुझे बहुत खराब लग रहा था, इसी के कारण उस दिन मुझे रोना आ गया और रो दिए थे।
खुशबू, आपका वो वीडियो देखकर बहुत सारे और लोग भी रो दिए, ये सिर्फ देखकर कि आपका कितना इतना डिटर्मिन्ड ड्रीम था। पर मैं जानना चाहती हूँ ऐसा क्या है डॉक्टर बनने के बारे में जो आपको इतना एक्साइट करता है, क्यों आप डॉक्टर बनना चाहती हैं?
जैसे मेरे गांव में हॉस्पिटल नहीं है, इधर मेरा क्षेत्र है ना, तो इधर हॉस्पिटल नहीं है। कोई आदमी बीमार होता है तो उन्हें इलाज करवाने के लिए शहर जाने पड़ते हैं, तो उन्हें ज्यादा तकलीफ होती है। बहुत सारे आदमी तो जाते जाते में ही डेथ कर जाते हैं। तो ये सब बुरा लगता था, मुझे लगता था कि शायद हम डॉक्टर बनते तो गांव में अस्पताल खोलते ताकि गरीब को इलाज हम अपने गांव में ही करते। इसीलिए मुझे डॉक्टर बनना था।
खुशबू, हमें ये बताइए, पत्रकारों में हमने ये पढ़ा कि बेसिकली आपके पेरेंट्स के पास जितना जो फंडिंग होना चाहिए था वो बस नहीं था उनके पास। वो मतलब वही हुआ या कुछ और हुआ था, इसलिए वो आपको साइंस नहीं पढ़ने दे रहे थे? आप थोड़ा हमें बता सकते हैं?
ये सर, जैसे मैम आर्ट्स में 11th तो कोई पढ़ता नहीं है, 12th पढ़ेंगे ना तो 7200 में मेरा पूरा कोर्स कंप्लीट हो जाता है। और तो ऐसे आर्ट्स का शायद बुक भी सस्ता में ही आ जाता है, सेकंड हैंड भी ले सकते हैं, कॉपी भी ज्यादा जरूरत नहीं पड़ती है। और आर्ट्स पढ़ेंगे तो हम घर से भी पढ़कर निकाल सकते थे। गांव के लोग तो सोचते हैं कि आर्ट्स ली है तो घर पे पढ़ेगी 6 महीना तो वो निकल जाएगी, तो यही सोचकर वो लोग आर्ट्स दिलवा दिए। और साइंस में होता है कि उसमें पढ़ना भी ज्यादा होता है, जिसके लिए कोचिंग करना पड़ेगा। उसका बुक कॉपी ये सब भी थोड़ा महंगा आता है, टीचर्स भी पैसा ज्यादा लेते हैं। 11th कोर्स का अलग लगेगा, 12th का अलग लगेगा, और उसमें पैसा भी ज्यादा लगता है।
तो खुशबू लड़की हैं, उनको घर पे रह के पढ़ा लिया जाए इसलिए आर्ट्स दे दिया गया, पैसा भी कम लगेगा, लड़की भी घर पे रहेगी। पर खुशबू डटी रही। खुशबू, कहाँ से इंस्पिरेशन मिलती है इतने डटे रहने की और साइंस अपनी ड्रीम्स को परस्यू करने की?
यस मैम, जहाँ हम मैट्रिक के पढ़ाई किए थे वो सर ज्यादा मोटिवेट करते थे कि देखो बाबू, तुम गांव से हो और गांव से निकलना है, गांव को आगे बढ़ाना है, तो तुम्हें ही कुछ करना पड़ेगा। तो मुझे भी लगा कि हाँ, शायद गांव में कुछ करना है, या लड़की को पढ़ना है तो आगे तो कोई कुछ करेगा तभी तो पीछे से आगे बढ़ेगा सब।
क्या बात
तो मुझे 10th क्लास वाले सर मोटिवेट ज्यादा करते थे।
ये सुन के बहुत बहुत खुशी मिली हमें। आप खुशबू हमें ये भी बताओ, गांव में पढ़ना आसान है क्या? बहुत स्कूल बने हुए हैं, थोड़ा आप हमें समझाएंगे?
नहीं मैम, यहाँ गाँव है ना, अभी तो रोड बन गया है, 2 महीना पहले रोड बना है, पहले रोड भी नहीं था। और बाढ़ ये सब में यहाँ पर बहुत ज्यादा दिक्कत होती है, उस पूरा गांव में पानी आ जाता है तो जाने आने में दिक्कत होती है।
तो खुशबू जी अपने गांव की दिक्कतें ठीक करना चाहती है, पर घर की दिक्कतें कैसे ठीक करी आपने खुशबू? घर पे जब आपने बोला कि भाई नहीं पढ़ना है पहला, और उसके बाद वाला रिएक्शन क्या था माँ बाप का?
खुश तो है अभी कि जो बेटी चाहती थी वो अब हो रहा है, तो खुश है।
ओके खुशबू जी, आप हमें ये बताओ, आपका जो गांव के लिए सपना है, आपने कहा हॉस्पिटल बनाना चाहते हो आप, बट उसके अलावा गांव के लिए आपका क्या सपना है, बताइए।
मुझे तो सोच रहे थे कि यहाँ की लड़कियों के लिए कुछ पढ़ने का अच्छा व्यवस्था हो जाता तो ज्यादा अच्छा रहता, ताकि लड़की लोग भी आगे बढ़े। लड़का तो बढ़ ही रहा है, लड़की ही नहीं ना बढ़ती है गांव में, तो लड़की के लिए कुछ हो जाता तो अच्छा रहता है।
तो खुशबू, आपकी बात तो सरकार में बैठे हुए काफ़ी सारे लोगों ने भी सुनी, आपकी ड्रीम तो पूरी हो रही है, पर आपकी जैसी और जो लड़कियां हैं जो ड्रीम करना चाहती हैं, उनके लिए आप क्या कहेंगी? आपके हिसाब से क्या रिक्वायर्ड है इस समय जो लोग सुन रहे हैं, जो कुछ कर सकते हैं, वो क्या करें आपके लिए?
जैसे मैम गांव में लड़कियों की ज्यादा इसीलिए नहीं पढ़ाया जाता ताकि उनके माता पिता के पास पैसा ही नहीं होता, इसीलिए नहीं पढ़ाते हैं। तो शायद अच्छा व्यवस्था स्कूल में हो, टीचर्स अच्छे हो, तो वो लड़कियां शायद पढ़ सकती है। और ट्यूशन करने के लिए घर पे भी पैसा होना चाहिए ना, तो वो लोग ट्यूशन भी करने के लिए नहीं भेजते हैं।
खुशबू, अपनी सारी स्टोरी हमारे साथ शेयर करने के लिए बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया एंड व्हाट एन इंस्पायरिंग स्टोरी। लवली टू सी दैट शी केप्ट एट इट एंड शी इज सो डिटरमिन्ड टू कीप हर स्टोरी अलाइव एंड सो मेनी गर्ल्स लाइक खुशबू आर स्ट्रगलिंग टुडे
but that are so cool, so fearless in going there, putting out their story and also fighting for other young girls to study. We hope this is something that every woman in our country gets to see, you know, that freedom to study what they want. We're going to head into a quick break though. On the other side, we are going to be shifting focus. We won't tell you to exactly what yet. We'll see you in just a few minutes.
Madam Director, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to speak with you.
It's great to see you.
This isn't the first time that you've been in India. You've come here before, but first time as Director of the National Intelligence. And we're looking forward to having you here and very happy that India is one of your first ports of call after you've assumed office. You've had your meetings with Mr. Doval and the other Intel czars. Can you tell us a little bit about the scope of intelligence sharing between India and the US?
Of course. So first of all, it's wonderful to be back in India. Really, the tone and the relationship with our new administration under President Trump and Prime Minister Modi was set during Prime Minister Modi's visit to the White House. As you know, they are already good friends. It was a very great opportunity for them to share their joint vision for the US-India partnership and the opportunity for us to continue to strengthen that partnership. So the meetings that I've had here with different Indian government officials and intelligence officials really is set on that foundation of how we can continue to integrate, how we can continue to strengthen our relationship, not only, of course, in my area of intelligence, but we're looking at commerce and trade and defense and education. There's nothing but opportunity that I see here in the US-India partnership.
Well, you spoke about commerce and trade. Of course, there's a lot of anxiety among Indians about the tariff regime. Could you tell us which way that's headed? And in the pecking order of the US-India relationship priorities, where does the tariff regime come in?
You know, what I have heard from the Indian government officials that I've spoken to over the last few days, there is an opportunity here to see more potential for the strengthening of our economic relationship. And I'm glad to see that they're looking at it in a more positive light than just one that is focused in a negative way when we look at tariffs. Obviously, Prime Minister Modi is looking out for what is in the best interests of India's economy and the opportunities available for the people of India. Similarly, President Trump is doing the same for the United States, our economic interests and the interests of the American people. So what I see as a great positive is that we have two leaders who have common sense and who are looking for good solutions. This direct dialogue happening at the very top in both of our countries, but also at the different secretaries and the cabinet members, is going to be key to lay down what that path forward really looks like. And I personally am excited because there's keen interest in the private sector here in India and in the United States to seek out those opportunities and to maximize them.
Ma'am, there's a lot of attention, of course, in the Asia-Pacific region for your visit here and the earlier port of call. I wanted to ask you, what is your assessment of the Chinese threat in the Asia-Pacific region, and do you see India as a key player to counter China?
You know, I've grown up in Hawaii and I've spent a lot of time in different countries across the Indo-Pacific region, and so understand at a deeply personal level the importance of this area for my country. And also, I think just as importantly, in understanding the complexities that exist within the histories of each of these countries, India and China, Vietnam, Thailand, the Philippines, the United States, of course. So what I appreciate about President Trump and his approach, and some comments that I heard Prime Minister Modi make recently, is they are very practical and they are pragmatic and are looking to strike that balance that will allow us to hopefully prevent any kind of conflict. Obviously, as it relates to China, there are challenges. There are also opportunities. And we have two leaders of two very important countries who will play a very central role in taking on those challenges, resolving issues where they exist, and also maximizing any opportunities. The goal, of course, that we all share is to achieve peace, to increase prosperity, and to ensure stability and security for both of our peoples, but in the region as well.
Ma'am, when you took over, there was a lot of attention to what people said that you were a sharp critic of US forever wars and regime change wars. But you also said, and I'm going to quote you said, when it comes to the war against terrorists, I'm a hawk. How does the Trump administration see the repeated terror attacks on India from Pakistan?
You know, President Trump, through his first administration in the presidency, and it continues now, has been very clear about his commitment to defeating this threat of Islamist terrorism that has unfortunately plagued us, has and continues to pose a direct threat to the American people. But we see how it's been impacting people here in India, in Bangladesh, currently ongoing in Syria, Israel, and different countries in the Middle East. So this is a threat that I know Prime Minister Modi also takes seriously, and one where the leaders of our two countries will work together to try to identify and defeat that threat.
I'd like to pivot a little bit on the ISET initiatives. Do you see India and the US cooperating in the field of semiconductors and nuclear energy?
Yeah, you know, I think there's not really any bounds to where the United States and India are looking to cooperate. And once again, we saw the initial vision and goals laid out by Prime Minister Modi and President Trump in their joint statement that came from the meeting that they had there in the Oval Office at the White House. So there are a lot of different elements, of course, with the private sector and with our respective agencies as it relates to commerce, to see where those opportunities are, to see where there may be barriers to access, and see how
Welcome back, and over the next couple of days our obsession with space will go to another degree as history is unfolding in the skies as Indian origin astronaut Sunita Williams makes her return to Earth, hopefully safely, aboard SpaceX Crew 9 after 9 months aboard the International Space Station. Her journey back is nothing short of breathtaking, re-entering the atmosphere at blazing speed, enduring intense heat, and finally splashing down off the coast of Florida.
So NASA's live coverage has begun, and we're going to be bringing you every single important moment. So right from the hatch closure and breaking down for you why that moment is so important, to the undocking. This is a high-risk re-entry and the final splashdown that will finally take place. So let's very quickly walk you through everything that's going to take place in the next few hours.
Yeah.
All the times we're telling you are Indian times. So 10:15 a.m. we mean in just a little while from now. 10:15 a.m. IST, the SpaceX Crew 9 undocking. That entire process will begin. Crew 9 will be undocking. At 10:35 a.m., the undocking will be confirmed and the crew will actually officially leave ISS, which means they will be separated from all of the ISS supplies, which is why it's such an important step. 2:15 a.m. NASA's live broadcast for the re-entry will actually begin. So if you're up at night, if you're a space nerd, 2:15 is when to check out all of that coverage in the morning. 2:41 a.m. the deorbit burn will actually start. So that's that highly dangerous phase when re-entry begins, and you have to be very, very careful of pressure, temperature. That's that moment of focus. 3:27 a.m. the splashdown, as Sonal was saying, the splashdown into the waters, the capsule landing off the Florida coast, that takes place. And 5 a.m. NASA's official return to Earth press conference.
And if you don't want to wake up that early, all you have to do is log in to the TVC program tomorrow, because we'll be dedicating the entire show, largely the show, to what's exactly happening and how safely and hopefully all goes well with that touchdown as well. But what happens during this re-entry, and why is it being talked about in this manner? Well, there is extreme heat. The capsule faces temperatures of over 1600 degrees Celsius, radio blackout, crew losses contact from several minutes as well. So that's this period of nervousness on we don't know what's happening. We'll of course have live coverage of all of that. The NASA tracker planes are there. They pick up visuals once the capsule actually enters lower atmosphere. Parachutes deploy, slowing down the descent for safe splashdown recovery. There are teams there which extract the crew and then conduct health checks as well. So what we are getting to know at this point is that if all is well, they will anyways be taken to a hospital for checkups and all of it. But what happens? And then the big question, for which we have Shrishti now joining us to take us through what exactly happened. Shrishti, very exciting times, very nervous times as well. I think the world is watching with bated breath on what happens to these two astronauts as they come back. And we've been waiting for their safe return back home for a while. But talk to us a little bit, not the complicated spacecraft bit, but about the health of these astronauts, which is of paramount importance. What happens to them when they've spent so much time up there, and how long will the recovery process really be?
Good morning, Toya and Sonal. So yes, definitely an exciting time. We all are waiting for the return of the two astronauts. So, like we discussed, it was an 8-month trip. So they thought, it was an 8-day long trip. That's what they thought, but it ended up becoming 9 months long. So see, any extended stay in space renders you much more vulnerable to a lot of effects. So one is, of course, the space radiation, which is always present. Nominal amount of radiation is always present. That's what the scientists tell us. But when you're staying in space for that long period of time, then it does tend to have some impact. A part of it can be recovered once you're back to Earth. We really don't know the amount of time it takes you to recover, but you do. But I think the most important impact is in the loss of your muscle density. It causes muscle atrophy because you're in microgravity, weightlessness for that long period of time. So that is why you see a lot of visuals of both the astronauts really exercising and trying to stay fit at the ISS. So the problem here is when I spoke to scientists, they say that the space agencies really make this data available. Once the astronauts are back, what are their health parameters? So it's very difficult to say. But over the years, so many astronauts have stayed at the International Space Station that they have now really understood about the kind of health parameters that they really need to adhere to once they are there, and ensure that they are in their best of health. But yes, of course, there will be some effects which we'll get to know once they are back on Earth.
Right, they basically forget that gravity is the thing, it's not their fault. So they don't realize, anytime they're picking up or dropping something, that it's going to fall once they return to Earth. We were also talking about baby feet and the fact that your feet go very, very soft when you've been up in space for that long. Let's just very quickly tell our audiences, the visuals you're looking at right now are coming in live. Shrishti, that's our next question to you. What's taking place right now? We use these complicated words. There's a dehatching process taking place right now. After that, what we're going to see happen is we're going to see the docking, and so all of that is going to happen. Shrishti, that's right now 8:15. The hatch stuff is taking place, and then in a little while you have the dock stuff taking place. That's the simple way to tell our audiences. Yes. But what does any of that mean? Break it down for audiences, because this is a very, very important stage.
And if you think of it, on Earth time, it's almost 24 hours of preparation, 24-hour long flight to prepare yourself to go there and get down. That's a long, long time.
Because your life could, if you make a slight mistake, Shrishti, why is this stage so important?
Indeed. So see, NASA and SpaceX is ensuring that all the steps are, they go as per the plan. That is where they are taking a little extra time. So like they started the live feed around 8:15. So 11 a.m. Indian Standard Time is when they are going to start the
Okay, I think we've lost our connection with Shrishti. We'll just try to re-establish it. We'll have her back here to explain
connection
to us.
space is solid, huh? Those pictures
Yeah.
are still live with us.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate she can break down for us because it's all very
Yeah.
complex scientific terms that we're using here, and it's so important to have someone who can break down exactly what's taking place and why it's so important. We do want to point out, because we're going to be saying this a few times, Sunita, Williams, Butch, Wilmore, obviously they didn't plan to stay up there for 9 months and now it's become a 9-month plus journey. But it's important to point out that there have been others who have stayed in space longer than them. So they haven't in any way created that record, but yes, in the sense that it was unplanned entirely, that they have had to deal with that psychological worry of kab wapas aayenge New Year's ke liye, Christmas ke liye.
I'm worried about families,
and that is
can I
huge.
just say the attitude with which they've approached this has been so super.
Yeah.
The videos that we've been getting of Sunita Williams, the way she went there trying to approach a crisis with that smile on your face, just loved it, right? Like that's what stories are really made of. That's what really makes your day and makes your life. So it's absolutely lovely. Makes us want them to be back safe and sound and share their stories even more. But enough of us gushing over what's really happening in space. Let's tell you a little more. Now, there have been months of uncertainty, of course, and finally the time has come when they will be hitting back Earth, hopefully safely. But how did they survive the space for so long? And what happens when they actually land? Our next report takes you inside their 9-month-long ordeal and the final countdown to their return. Sit back and enjoy.
For 9 months, 2 astronauts have been waiting for a way home. Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore stuck aboard the International Space Station after their return spacecraft was deemed too dangerous to fly. Now, after months of waiting, the countdown to Earth has finally begun. But how did they survive? What challenges did they face? And what happens when they finally land? A moment of history. Williams and Wilmore became the first crew to fly Boeing's Starliner spacecraft, a test mission to prove its capabilities as an alternative to SpaceX's Crew Dragon.
Let's put some fire in this rocket.
But just hours after launch, the problem started. Thruster failures, helium leaks, propulsion malfunctions. By the time they reached the ISS, NASA engineers had already decided Starliner was too unsafe for the journey back. With no alternative, Williams and Wilmore were told to wait. Wait for a rescue, wait for a new spacecraft, and wait to return to Earth. Surviving in space is not just about patience. It's about fighting the effects of microgravity, isolation, and radiation exposure every single day. To counteract these effects, they worked out for 2.5 hours daily, a rigorous routine designed to keep their bodies strong enough to survive Earth's gravity when they return. But even exercise couldn't help them escape one of the biggest challenges: mental endurance. Space is isolating. For 9 months, Williams and Wilmore were forced to adapt, not knowing when they'd come home. They spent Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's all away from their families.
So from all of us to all of you, Merry Christmas!
The ISS crew tried to keep morale high, celebrating birthdays, playing music, and even floating around a Christmas tree made of food cans. But nothing could change the uncertainty. Would they be stuck for another month? Another year? Every morning they waited for news. Every week, NASA delayed their return again. Then, on March 17th, the moment they had waited for finally arrived. SpaceX Crew 10 docked at the ISS. Their replacements had arrived. For Williams and Wilmore, this was their ticket home. They would board the Crew Dragon capsule, undock from the ISS, and begin a fiery descent back to Earth. The hardest part of the mission isn't over though. Re-entry speeds exceed 25,000 kilometers per hour. Extreme G-forces will push their bodies to the very limit. After months in microgravity, standing up will be nearly impossible. As soon as they land, NASA's medical teams will rush to their aid. Their return will mark the end of one of NASA's longest astronaut stays on the ISS. But it will also raise big questions. Is Boeing's spacecraft safe enough for future missions? Should NASA rely solely on SpaceX for astronaut transport? Can these failures be fixed before future Mars missions? NASA has already announced a full investigation into the Starliner's failures. Meanwhile, Sunita, Williams and Butch Wilmore will spend the next few months recovering, undergoing intensive medical testing to understand the long-term effects of their unexpected 9-month mission.
जहाज में बड़ी बड़ी
Madam Director, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity
Thank you.
to speak with you.
It's great to see you.
This isn't the first time that you've been in India. You've come here before, but first time as Director of the National Intelligence. And we're looking forward to having you here and very happy that India is one of your first ports of call after you've assumed office. You've had your meetings with Mr. Doval and the other Intel czars. Can you tell us a little bit about the scope of intelligence sharing between India and the US?
Of course. So first of all, it's wonderful to be back in India. Really, the tone and the relationship with our new administration under President Trump and Prime Minister Modi was set during Prime Minister Modi's visit to the White House. As you know, they are already good friends. It was a very great opportunity for them to share their joint vision for the US-India partnership and the opportunity for us to continue to strengthen that partnership. So the meetings that I've had here with different Indian government officials and intelligence officials really is set on that foundation of how we can continue to integrate, how we can continue to strengthen our relationship, not only, of course, in my area of intelligence, but we're looking at commerce and trade and defense and education. There's nothing but opportunity that I see here in the US-India partnership.
Well, you spoke about commerce and trade. Of course, there's a lot of anxiety among Indians about the tariff regime. Could you tell us which way that's headed? And in the pecking order of the US-India relationship priorities, where does the tariff regime come in?
You know, what I have heard from the Indian government officials that I've spoken to over the last few days, there is an opportunity here to see more potential for our the strengthening of our economic relationship. And I'm glad to see that they're looking at it in a more positive light than just one that is focused in a negative way when we look at tariffs. Obviously, Prime Minister Modi is looking out for what is in the best interests of India's economy and the opportunities available for the people of India. Similarly, President Trump is doing the same for the United States, our economic interests and the interests of the American people. So what I see as a great positive is that we have two leaders who have common sense and who are looking for good solutions. This direct dialogue happening at the very top in both of our countries, but also at the different secretaries and the cabinet members, is going to be key to lay down what that path forward really looks like. And I personally am excited because there's keen interest.
All right, welcome back to the Breakfast Club. Next, we bring you a special section on financial markets.
All right, this is a special segment on the financial markets powered by Money Control Pro, Money Control's premium destination for investing and business insight. Let's start with how markets are picked to open this Tuesday morning. Now, GIFT Nifty indicates a positive opening for the Indian stock markets. Asian markets rose in the morning trade, tracking the gains in the US stock. Crude oil prices, meanwhile, stood steady as traders eyed the Russia-Ukraine peace talks. Gold prices edge higher on continued demand for safe haven assets.
Right, quite a bit of worry right now in the markets as we've seen over the last few days. But let's take a look at one sector in particular. The affordable housing finance market is growing at a very fast pace. It's backed by several initiatives of the government along with a regulatory push. Despite competition from banks, this segment offers favorable risk-reward ratio and a huge opportunity for well-established financiers. Strong growth runway backed by rising demand and low penetration, together with secured nature of the lending, put affordable housing finance companies in a better position. This is all amid, as we said earlier, a continued uncertain environment. Now, you can log into Money Control Pro to find out more about India's affordable housing finance sector and various other actionable insights on the market. It's the premier destination for all investing views and financial insights that you're ever going to need, brought to you by Money Control. And with that, we're drawing our show to a close. We've already told you what we're going to be taking a look at tomorrow. It's so exciting. We're going to be spending the entire episode tracking Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore's return into Earth. How will it carry out? We obviously are praying that it'll take place beautifully, but we're going to be bringing you all that coverage right here.
So the coverage starts really early, but like we said, if you still want to sleep in, because 8 o'clock when we are back, we'll be able to recap all that is happening for you right here on the Breakfast Club. So see you then. Ta-da.
Goodbye.
Well, just like sports.
Madam Director, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity
Thank you.
to speak with you.
It's great to see you.
This isn't the first time that you've been in India. You've come here before, but first time as Director of the National Intelligence. And we're looking forward to